right now.
What did I do with my hands?
Yeah. Let's just do it. AFK discussions starts now.
Oh, there you are.
There we are.
Hey.
I don't know why it took like a second.
It did. I was talking. Okay, guys, welcome back to another edition of AFK Discussions. It's your boy Jason and your boy Phil. And tonight we have an awesome show. But real quick, I got a couple of announcements. FatTac.com. Check out FatTac.com. All your gear you need for tactical and body armor and holsters and belts. Anything you need, they got you covered. Also, t-shirts. They have AFK discussion shirts on there, so go buy one of those. And also, they got this really cool FatTac 80s style vaporware. I think is what the style is called. I designed it. I don't even know what it's called. But yeah, FatTac. Go check that out. Also, guys, coming up August 3rd in Nashville, Tennessee is Squatchella. Guys, you need to go and you need to buy tickets because they're going fast. But you got blurry creatures. You have the confessionals. You have ninjas or butterflies. You have expanded perspectives, and you have special guests. I'm going to be there, but I'm not a special guest. I'm just going to be working the confessionals booth. But maybe if you enjoy the show, maybe I will be a special guest for you.
Yeah, I think by this point next year, we would have bumped one of these other podcasts out of there.
That's right.
And will be on that list.
That's right.
That's just my thoughts on that.
That's right. And guys, so we're recording on Sunday. Some of you may be hearing this on podcast format on Thursday, but USA guys, this is Memorial Day weekend. Tomorrow's Memorial Day. And I just want to take time to say to all the veterans and everyone who has lost their lives in battle and serving our country, I just want to say thank you for everything that you have done. And it's great to live in a country where people will fight for our freedoms. So,
yeah, absolutely. I second that for sure. My dad was a veteran, so a lot of people in my family served, and so yeah, it's always great to remember not only them but the people that have fallen and given their lives for those very freedoms that didn't make it back. So
yes,
it's always a good thing to remember on Memorial Day for sure. I do want to do a cheap plug before we get into it as well, because I got Florentine Fest coming up June 8th in Sanford, Maine. I'm going to be doing a presentation on the Bridgewater Triangle. It's going to be absolutely incredible. So if you're in the Maine area, you're in Massachusetts, or you're nearby, tickets are on sale now. To hear me speak, you need to buy a ticket. So buy tickets. Come and see me. That's all I wanted to say about that. But like Jason said, we got an awesome show tonight. We got Daniel, who he's an incredible author, a poet, a lot of different works. He's waiting in the backstage. I can see him right now. So before we get him on, I did want to mention he has a book out, The Wrangler and a Letter from Home. And I know Jason said he wanted to talk about deliverance and blood curses, but let's not just talk about what he's going to talk about. Let's bring him on and let's see what he has to say. And so here he is. Let's bring him on up. Let's bring him center stage here. Oop, not me, him. There we go. What's going on, man? How are you?
Good. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, man,
we got you very, very clear.
All right, cool. Sorry, I was trying to get on my other systems, but man, my cameras weren't working at all, so I had to jump on my phone. So hopefully you guys could hear me and see me okay, and everything's is all good,
Yeah, man, we got you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think this will work just fine. We appreciate you coming on. Like I said, you've got a new book out. So we have a lot to talk about. So why don't you just give us a little, or the people out there, a little bit about yourself, your books, and just a little introduction to who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Daniel Swarthout. So, Jason, you actually did pronounce it correctly. So
Nice.
good job there. A lot of people butcher it. So you hitting it on the head was beautiful to me, actually. So thank you. But a little bit about me. I am adopted. I am the second oldest of six kids. My dad is a minister. He's been in the ministry for, oh man, since he was 19. And so 40, 45, 50 years now, almost. And so he's been doing it a long time. So I grew up in the church. My faith is very big to me. I am a Christian. So I do talk about my faith. I'm not afraid of it. People ask me about it. I talk about it freely. So it's very important to me. I'm a writer, as you said. I did a lot of poetry for a long time. I still write poetry, but my focus mostly now is my writing in my career. I would love to one day be able to walk away from my day job and be a full-time writer, and that's where my heart's at. That's where my prayer is, and that's what I'm pursuing in my life. And God's just been opening up a lot of doors ever since I got my first novel out there, to where I could be on podcasts like this, or be more outspoken about things that I've experienced in my life, and really focus on things that I believe that God wants me to talk about, and this is definitely one of them. But to go back on it, my book, I actually have a copy of it right here. I don't know if you can see it. Okay.
Yeah, it
It
looks
is
great.
called, oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's called The Wrangler. Um, what's nice about this book is it is going to be the first of four in a series. It's about four best friends that are from a town that I created in Washington. It's called Avent Falls. And about what it's about is basically what happens in the first book is there was a really bad accident that happened, and Tatum, one of the main characters, he lost his fiance. She ends up dying. And so, because of the tragic accident of her death, he ends up moving away from the falls, and he moves to Denver, Colorado. And he's been there about 4 years trying to start a new life, new venture. And he receives a letter in the mail from his dead fiance, and
Ooh.
it's in her handwriting. It's her house address. It even smells like her. And when he opens it up, inside the envelope is the engagement ring that she was buried with. And so it entices him to go back to the falls, a place that he said he's never going to go back to. And he ends up going back home, and it's a wild ride, man. And every chapter leaves you hanging. Every chapter is from a different perspective of a different character, and it's one of those stories that once you start, you make sure you have some time to sit down and read it, because it's going to suck you in. And it's yeah, I'm very proud of it. I've had a lot of good reviews about it. I've had a lot of people, just really, really love it. So many people message me about book two. I am in the process of writing book two. I'm about halfway done with it. It's called Seven Dead Heads. It's about the seven falls in Auburn Falls. And another thing is too is my book is Christian based, but it's not your typical Christian novel. What I mean by that, it's very dark in some areas. A lot of the supernatural stuff that happened in this book are stuff that I personally have experienced, or somebody in my family or somebody I know. And I feel like God opens doors like that to where we could experience things, and I'm not afraid to talk about them or write about them. So that's what it is. You could find this book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You could find it all over, really. I mean, I've sold some copies in the UK already. It's being sold in China, Japan, all over the place, man. So if you search my name, you could definitely find it.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. It took me, well, realistically, it took me 14 years to write it. And the reason why is because I rewrote it three times. I scratched it. I started from scratch. I, threw it away, went back to it, started over. Just wasn't really where I wanted to be at that time. And my writing matured so much throughout the years, and God just really said, "Hey, this is what I want you to write about." And He just opened the doors. And one day I just sat down and went to town on it and finished it up. And God allowed the doors to open to where I could get it published and put it out there for people. And so I'm very proud of it.
Awesome,
That's
man. Yeah,
awesome.
dude, like you hooked me with some of the stuff you're talking about. It was just like, wow, I got to check this book out. Actually, before you came on, I was looking at Amazon. I was about to order it. But I was wanting to ask you, is Amazon the best place to get it, or do you have like a direct from you kind of, because I know sometimes Amazon takes a bunch of money from people. So I didn't know if you could order it direct and you get more of the money than, Amazon or something like that.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, man. Thanks for asking that. Nobody's never really asked me that, so I appreciate that actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you buy from the actual publisher, my publisher is Westbow Press. If you go to Westbow Press and you go to their bookstore, you search my name, you could find it. I actually get 50% from there, so I get way more royalties from that site. And if you go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble or anything, it depends what format you purchase, but those I get like like ebooks are 50%. It doesn't matter where you buy. If you buy ebook, I get 50%. But if you buy from like Amazon, I get, oh man, I can't even remember. It's like, I don't know. Like for instance, if the book is $24, I get like $3 or something like that if you buy from Amazon or something like that.
Wow.
So, but either way, I mean, the biggest thing is just getting it out there. So feel free, if you want to buy it from Amazon, you feel safer from Amazon, buy it from wherever you feel comfortable from. Because either way, it helps me. So I appreciate that question, though.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah. So I know in your email, I know we're probably going to get there, but I mean, gosh, you like some of the stuff you were talking about. I was just like, wow, I got to talk to this guy. I mean, even just the title. That's what. Whenever I posted on Instagram, I said, what would. My mind goes blank sometimes. I don't know if you listen to the show, but yeah. So let me open I got to refresh my mind. So blood curses and deliverance. I couldn't think of blood curse. I was like, what was it? How did he say
terminology? Well, because you don't want to be wrong.
Yeah, I don't want to be wrong, and I mean, look more like an idiot than I already do.
No, so how I got the title is actually a shout out to Bo Kennedy on the Bump podcast. Him and I did a session together back in April, and it aired in May 1st, I believe it was, May 1st and May 7th, or May 8th. Sorry, it's 2 weeks. It was 2 week session because it was 3 hours long. And when we did ours, and that's what he titled it. And I just love the title. So shout out to Bo. He was the very first podcast I was ever on, and we had a great time on the Bump podcast. So if you guys have time to listen to him, he's phenomenal. But he actually entitled it because when we talked on that podcast, I talked about blood curse that is affiliated with me and my older siblings, and then deliverance is because there was a time where I met a young lady who was demon possessed, and she had 3 demons in her. And I actually, I could go over that story if you guys want me to, but I actually, God led my heart, and he's like, hey, I want you to pray over this girl. And so I did, and she was delivered that day. And so it's just an amazing story and a testimony, that God used myself and another young lady that was with me at the time. Her name is Tiffany. God just really used us in a powerful way that time. And so that's why Bo entitled it that. And I just thought that was like a great title. So trying to talk to other podcasts. That's what I was, I sent that out there. And
yeah. I was hooked. I was like, oh, dude. So I want to also thank you for the email, because I mean, honestly, we do most of the reaching out to people to get them on the podcast. And when you reached out, I was like, awesome, dude. Someone wants to be on our show. That's awesome.
Someone
so I want to thank you for that. Another thing that resonates with me, because you said you were adopted. So I have 3 kids who are all adopted. My wife and I couldn't have children of our own. So I mean, I really like, that's awesome. And that's something I've worried about. Is generational curses with them coming from other families and stuff. Is that something kind of what you were talking about, you and your siblings? And I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yeah, we got you now. Yeah.
Hey, I apologize. When you were talking, the live thing that you went on your Instagram started playing all over my phone. So I did not hear you. I did not hear you at all.
Okay.
Whenever you're talking about there. I will say that whenever I talk about this stuff, like with Bo, when we were talking about it, my internet cut out, or we lost feed, or we got disconnected, and I feel like that was part of the issue there. So I do apologize, but can you kind of go back on that?
Yeah, I will. But that, I mean, that's expected. I mean, when things like this, when you talk about spiritual warfare and
Oh,
things,
absolutely.
stuff happens. Yeah. No, I was saying, I can't remember what what I said at first, um,
Your
but
kids, the adoption.
yeah,
Mhm.
I thought it's worse. So, I have 3 kids that are all adopted.
Oh, very cool.
And yeah. So what you said resonated with me because you said you and your siblings, had like sort of like a generational curse or something that you were dealing with, and that's something that I have also wondered about because um, I know the backgrounds of where my kids come from,
Hmm.
and it's not a very good place.
Hmm.
So that's something that I often wonder about if they're going to have to deal with things like that in the future. So.
My biggest advice there is just, I'm sure you do, but constantly, continuously pray for your kids, man. Because the devil, when he gets a grip and he gets a hold and he find a wedge in, he does it.
Mhm.
And it could be the simplest things, and whether it's and I know a lot of people make fun of this, but it's true. It's whether the music you listen to, the movies you watch, whatever you interact with in your life, man. It opens doors, because then it does. It's like a domino effect for real. And so it does. And I will say that, man, all 6 of us are adopted. My older brother and I, my parents adopted Michael and I when we were young. I was 3, Michael was 4. We were born in Nevada. They adopted us in Nevada. And then when I was about 5, we moved to we moved to Montana for a little bit. We lived there for about a year and a half, 2 years. And then when I was 5, we moved to Southern Cali. When we lived in Southern California, I think I was 9, because Nicole's 4 years younger than me. We got Nicole when she was 5 or 6. So I was either 9 or 10 is when my parents took in Nicole and Janie. And then Nicole was telling my parents about how she has a brother and a sister. And during a visitation, my parents went in with Nicole and Janie to visit their siblings. And sure enough, they had a boy and another girl there. And my parents ended up taking all 4 of them. And my parents adopted all 4 of them. And so Cody, Janie, Nicole, and Katie are all biological. They have the same mom, same dad. And then they were adopted by my parents. And then me and Michael are biological. We have an older brother who's 3 years older than me. And the 3 of us, we have the same mom and dad. But Darren was adopted to a different family before we were adopted. I think he, I don't know how long I don't know what the difference in time was before Darren was adopted, before Mike and I, but we were adopted later to my parents. And so um, it's, the devil, and all 6 of us come from bad backgrounds. All
Mhm.
6 of us had, crazy stuff happen to us in our life. But the blood curse part really is about me and my older brothers.
Okay.
More so me. Not saying that my younger siblings had anything bad happen to them, because they did. They had, before they were adopted. God bless them on that. But I will say, what's crazy though with this blood curse is it still affects my siblings still, because whenever I experience something, a lot of times it is by myself. But there is many, many, many times that all my siblings, every single one of them, have experienced something with me. And
Mm,
so that's why I know, as a kid growing up, you don't really tell your parents about it too much, or you do at first, but then
Mhm.
they kind of brush it off, like there's a monster in the closet or whatever. So your parents are like, oh, it's a bad dream, whatever. And they kind of brush it off. It was kind of like that, because my parents are very religious, growing up in the church. My mom and dad, every Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday, prayer meeting, whatever it was, if the doors were open, we were there. And so I grew up in it. And church was just a big thing to us. God's a big thing to us. It's the foundation of our home. But the devil doesn't care.
Yeah.
And if he can get in, if he could cause chaos, if he cause bad blood between people in a family, he's going to do it. And so he attacks, and he doesn't stop. And so, as a kid, when you see things and you experience things, you talk to your parents about it, and you get that feeling as a kid, you don't really believe it, or they don't really believe you. So you stop talking about it. And so growing up, it was like, okay, am I really seeing things or is it really happening? But then when my siblings start to experience it, I was like, I'm like, okay, I know it's not fake. I know it's real. And so that's the sanity part of it. It's nice to having your siblings experience it, and so it helps. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that the biggest thing for you is when your siblings. I think it's cool that you adopted. Adoption is big to me. I'm a big believer that blood doesn't make you family.
Mhm.
The way you are with people is a relationship and love and I had a great childhood, man. I had a great family. Love my parents to death, and now my mom, my dad, he doesn't really listen to podcasts, but my mom does. She's very avid. She listens to so many of them. And she's the reason why I started talking podcast is because she's like, hey, you should talk. You should, get invites or see if you can get added to podcasts. And ever since she started listening to them, she just really believes everything that I've experienced.
Yeah.
And now I'm not afraid to call her and be, hey, mom, this is what happened. Or she's very open to it and she listens to it. And of course, she gives me advice. She's like, pray, pray about it, pray before you sleep, or if you feel something, pray, call upon God, and so it definitely opens doors there to build a relationship. Me and my mom are way closer now than when I was a teenager, and it's nice to see how God does that,
Mhm.
and but so what my blood curse is, and this is me being 100% real with you. I do want to say this. Anything that I talked to you about today is true. I'm not. I don't do this to glorify things or to bring awareness to things. I do it because I believe God wants me to speak about it, and I'm not gonna exaggerate on things. What I tell you is exactly what I know has had happened, and I believe in honesty. So I like to put that out there. But what my blood curse is I have a demonic presence that follows me ever since I was 3 years old.
Mm.
If it was before then, I don't remember it. I do remember my childhood before I was adopted. When I was I was 3, which is not a good thing, they say. So I do remember a lot of the stuff that happened to me when I was a child. But then when I was 3 and I was adopted, man, I've had this demonic presence follow me. And when I first happened it was a Sunday afternoon. We were living in Montana. Uh, Upstairs, it spread off into a T section when you went up the stairs, and to the right was Michael and I's bedroom. He had a bed and I had a bed. How big they were, I don't remember. I want to say they're probably twin size. They're big enough for us. Michael's was against the wall, and then there was a lamp or a dresser with a lamp on between us, and then there was my bed, and he had a window on the end of his room that was outside, obviously led outside, and it was about 2 stories tall because it was the second floor. And on the left hand side, we had a big old playroom, and I don't know how big it really was, but to me as a 3-year-old, it was big. And we had a huge window in there. And like I said before, to other people, I don't know if it was 6 feet, 8 feet. I don't know how big the window was, but as a kid, it was huge. And it looked outside and went directly down, and you could see the sidewalk that went around the house and stuff like that. And well, it was a Sunday afternoon, and we were told to go to bed. I don't know if we got in trouble or if it was just our Sunday afternoon nap or whatever the case was. We were told to go to bed, and Michael was in his bed, and I'm in my bed. And and it's still like I want to say it's like 2, 3 in the afternoon because the lights are coming in through the window. You could see clear. I mean, you could see like you're looking into a lighted room. It was like that. And so I've always slept with my head in the covers. It's a safety thing for me. I'm not as bad now, but I do tend to find myself falling asleep with my head in the covers now too. But then when I was 3, when I was sleeping, I felt the covers get ripped off me. And standing at the foot of my bed was this demonic figure. And he was real tall. I would say probably 6'4", 6'5". And then obviously I didn't know how tall he was, but as an adult, I'm 6'2". So when I see him in person now, I know he's taller than me. So he's like 6'4", 6'5". And he was standing at the foot of my bed, and his face was white, and his eyes were blacked out to where it didn't look like he had any eyes, just like empty sockets. And his hair is really long and shaggy. And the way I like to describe it kind of is the outfit he wore is kind of like what the Peaky Blinders would wear. And he looked at me and he put his finger over his lips like this, and he did this like and he just did a smile behind it. And of course, as a kid, I'm seeing it. I start screaming. Michael wakes up, and Michael sees it, and he starts screaming. And my mom's downstairs. I want to say my dad's asleep. I don't know exactly if he is or not, or if my dad's doing a visit, or if he's out and about on that Sunday afternoon. But I know it's my mom that came and got us. She runs up the stairs and she grabs me and she hugs me. She's thinking maybe we fell out of the bed or we got hurt or something like that. And so she's hugging us. She brings us downstairs and we sit at the top, at the head of the table. And at the head of the table, I could see directly up the staircase to where our bedroom would lead. And she's holding me and she's hugging Michael at the same time, and she's trying to comfort both of us. And I'm telling her, I said, Mom, there's somebody there. And she's like, no, there's nobody there. She's like, there's nobody there. And I was like, no, I said, there's somebody there. And when I look up the stairs, I could see him standing at the top of the stairs, staring down at me. And he's smiling still with his finger over his lips. And of course, my mom never sees him. But that's the first time I ever saw him. And he's been around since then. And I'm 34 now, and I still experience him. That's actually one reason why I even wrote Bo to begin with, was because of the experiences I was getting. And there was years, man, that it didn't happen. Like after I prayed over that one girl who was demon possessed, it was probably 6-7 years, nothing happened. And then when God called me into writing my book, and he's like, hey, your book, you need to get it out there. You need to finish it. I was called into obedience to get my novel out there. And when I started to finish my book and do my edits and send it into publication, man, it just started to get wild again. And so like I'm at that age now to where I'm at. I'm like, I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to be, if it happens, I'm not going to be afraid to just speak about it, because I really believe the veil is thinning. And I believe that a lot of stuff is going to be happening, and I think it's going to be more prominent. You're going to hear a lot about, demonic possessions and just the evilness in the world, and I believe that God's getting me ready to talk, to use me in that realm, and I pray about it. I'm ready for it. I want to be, a tool for God, and so if He says, hey, I need you to go somewhere and pray over somebody, I'm gonna do it. And so it's just something that's God's been working in my life. But that's the blood curse I've been having, for a long time. And the reason why is my uncle who passed away, I want to say it's been about a year and a half ago now. He's my Uncle Gary. Me and my uncle were very close. He was actually the person when I was in college, when I would kind of write on my novel, I would send him, the first chapter, and he would send it back and say, nope, take this out. This is bad. Take this out. You said this too many times, or this word too many times. Or he would circle something like, this is really good. Keep this, or whatever the case was. And so whenever I would experience things, I would always call him, because when he was younger, he was a very, very big, strong Christian. And God actually used him many times to cast demons out and to pray over people and just, be a witness for God. And the older he got, he wanted to learn a lot more about the occult and the demonic world, to where he could fight it better. And the devil just got a hold of him and sucked him in. And so he just, in his later years in life, he just really, knew a lot about the witchcraft and the occults and black magic, and just like I said, the devil had him. And but it didn't affect our relationship. We were still very close, and anytime something would happen to me, I would call him, say, hey, uncle, this is what's going on. What do you think? What do you advise? And so he would always answer my phone call. That was the one thing about my uncle. And if for some reason he didn't, he would call me back right away. He'd say, hey man, I'm sorry, I missed your call. What's going on? And I've learned a lot of stuff throughout the years because of him. And so when this stuff would start really happening to me, and I would call him and talk to him about it, I could tell it worried him. So he would do a lot of research himself, and he never could find anything about this certain demon. Either could I. I mean, all the years I've done research, I've still to this day have not found anything about him. Um, and but the only thing my uncle really thought was that it was from Egyptian culture, because he called me one day. He's like, "Hey, Dan." He's like, he would call me Danny. He's like, "Hey, Danny, are you? I got a question for you. So I just want you to be, honest about it." And I was like, "Yeah, sure. What's up?" And he said, "Are you and Mike? Are you guys fascinated with Egyptian culture?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, are you guys just drawn to it? Like, do you like it? Is it passion? Are you passionate about it?" And I was like, "Yeah." So actually, I think it's very cool. I said, "I love it." I said, "It's one of my favorite times in history, and I do a lot of research about it and stuff." And he's like, "That explains a lot to me." He's like, "I really think that the demon that follows you is attached to Egyptian culture." And but that's all he could figure out, really. And one day now that he called me, he's like, "I'm gonna ask you some questions. I want you to answer." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And he's like, "Dan, I really think that this demon is attached to you through a blood curse." And he said, "That's why it affects you more than it does your brothers." He's like, "I'm gonna ask you some questions and just be real." And I was like, "Yeah, okay." He said, "They're gonna sound weird." He said, "But just run with it." I was like, "Okay." And one of the questions was, he's like, "Hey," he's like, "Do you have any scars that you can't explain?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, just like, "Do you have a scar somewhere on your body that you don't know how you got it?" He said, it will be in certain areas. And he's like, "I'm going to tell you where they are." He said, "It could be in your inner thigh." He said, "Under your chin, like right here." He said, "Your inner arm, above your pelvic area." And as soon as he said that, I was like, "Actually, I do." I said, "I got a scar in my pelvic area. It's about this big. And I have no idea how I got it." And he said that answers my question. He said that when witches or people who do witchcraft or blood magic, he said they obviously they like to use the youngest because it has the quote most pure blood. And he said, and at that time you would have been the youngest, you would have had the purest blood. And he said that's one of the places that they take the blood from. And so ever since then, my mom always thought the same. My dad, anytime we ever talked about it, we all thought the same. And my uncle just kind of confirmed it for us. So yeah, we really do believe it's a blood curse, because I have that scar. I have no idea where it came from, and but that's what he thinks. And my uncle actually passed away, like I said, about a year and a half ago. So it's been kind of hard, because for me, I can't. He was the person that I would call to or run to about certain things. But I also believe that God works in mysterious ways, and I'm not saying that to be a cliche, but I think that God did that in a way, because with the darkness that I've been experienced lately, it's I can't run to my uncle no more. I have to run to God, and I
Yeah.
have to be like, "Hey, God, this is what's going on. Start praying to God and call upon His name, because He's the one that at the end He's the one that protects me and so
Yeah.
forth." So, but man, I've had whatever. If you guys have questions or anything you want to talk about, just ask me, because there's so many things in my life that I've done, that I've seen or experienced, and so I'm not afraid to talk about them. But let me think here. So one crazy one that I've never talked about on any form or platform or podcast or anything was uh, this was when Michael and I were. I want to say Michael started working at one of the prisons here in Missouri, and he was, I want to say 23, 24, and we're 13 months apart. So if he was 24, I was 23, whatever. But we had finally got our own place together. We moved into this small apartment. It was nothing fancy, nothing big. And it was one of those apartments where your bedrooms are like literally right next to each other, and it's just a thin wall between it. And I was working at Taco Bell at the time. I would drive 30 minutes to Mexico, Missouri, to work at the Taco Bell there. And the reason why we picked the city that we lived in was because that's where the prison was. And since Michael made more money then, it just made sense to us that we lived there, because he would barely have to travel, and I would just travel to this Taco Bell that I was working at for a couple of years already. And so we lived there, and I don't know if you know many people who work in corrections or anything, but my brother, he worked there for, I want to say 2, maybe 3 years total. but it changed him. The dude hardly ever smoked or ever drank or anything. But then when he started working in that place, he just started drinking and smoking, and you could see it change him. And I would talk to him about it a lot. It's like, man, something's going on with you. It's just a different place for you. And he ended up leaving the corrections a few years later, which is nice because it really did. It just changed the whole concept of who he was working at that place. But when we were living there, he would party a lot with three of his buddies there that worked in the corrections with him, and they would go to one of their houses and they would drink and do their thing. And the party scene was never really for me. I was, really big in sports growing up, so I played a lot of basketball and went to China and Japan and Alaska and all over playing ball. And so sport and drinking and smoking never really was my thing. I never associated with it or anything like that. Well, I remember it was one Friday, and I know it was a Friday because Michael was off the next 2 days, and him and his three buddies, so they went up to another city, which was about 35, 40 minutes from where we were living, to go to this club or this bar or whatever. And Mike told me, he's like, hey man, I'm not going to be home tonight. I'm going out with two of my buddies. We're going to go drink and then we're going to crash at his place or get a hotel or something. And he said, I'll see you in the morning, or I'll see you the next day. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. And at that time, only Mike and I lived together. That's it. Neither of us had significant others. We didn't have girlfriends, nothing like that, nothing serious. So the only people that had keys to our apartment was me and him. That's it. And when I got home, that he had texted me, I was at work, and so I knew coming home it was just going to be me. So at that time, Skyrim had just came out, so I was real big into playing Skyrim. And I got home. I don't know, it was probably like 6, 7 o'clock that night. Got home, went and got some food, came back, and I went to my bedroom. And if Michael wasn't home, I'm staying in my room. I'm not going to stay in the living room or do anything. I'm just going to be in my room. And I was sitting in my room playing video games. And around 11 o'clock at night, I hear the front door open. And I know I locked it. I deadbolted it. I knew I did. And I heard it open. And so I paused the TV, I paused the game, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking and like listening, seeing if I could hear anything. And I hear the door shut and I hear it latch. And I grab my phone, I look at the time, it's like 11:05. And I was like, okay, Mike's not coming home tonight. So I'm sitting there and I listen, I hear whoever it was walk into the kitchen, and I hear them open cabinets, and I hear the faucet turn on. And then I hear them walk down the hallway, and I hear them go into the bathroom, and I hear the faucet turn on in the bathroom. I hear the shower turn on, and I'm thinking, okay, it's Michael. He's drunk. I said, Michael's getting ready to take a shower. No big deal. So I text Mike. I was like, hey man, you doing okay? Nothing, no response. So I was like, okay, he hasn't looked at his phone. So I'm sitting there, and I just hear like banging around. I'm like, okay, no big deal. Michael texted me. He's like, about 11:30. He's like, hey, I'm not home, bro. He's like, I'm still in Hannibal. And I was like, what? So I call him. I was like, hey, I was like, where you at? He's like, I'm with Bornhop and Hubble. And I was like, I'm still in Hannibal. And I was like, dude, Mike, somebody's in the apartment. He's like, what do you mean? And I was like, dude, there's somebody in the apartment right now. And he's like, it ain't me. And I was like, well, and we're on the second floor. So the only way, I mean, you could go up the stairs, obviously, and walk up the stairs to get to the second floor. But it was so high up, there's no way you could climb up to the sliding glass door that led to the balcony. You just couldn't do it. And because I'm 6'2", and even if I stood on the balcony on the below, there's no way I could jump up and get it. And so I was like, I told Mike, I said, dude, there's somebody in here. And Mike's like, it ain't me, bro, because I promise you I'm not home. And so what I do is I get off the phone and I open the door a little bit and I kind of peek out. And sure enough, the hallway light's on, which if I'm big on electricity, but I'm also big on, if I'm by myself, all the lights are going to be off. I'll just be in my room with the light on. And so I open the door and I look in the hallway and the lights are on. And I do hear the water running in the bathroom, and I hear the water running in the kitchen. So I get up and I walk down the hallway and I go to where the door is, and it's a straight shot to the front door, and the door is dead bolted. And I'm like, okay. So I'll come around to the kitchen, and all the cabinet doors are open and the faucet's running. So I walk up and I close up all the cabinet doors, and then I turn off the faucet. And then I walk down the hallway. Michael's door is shut. And so I go into the bathroom, and the faucet's running and the shower's on. And I end up turning off the shower and I turn off the faucet. And I just kind of stand there in the bathroom, kind of listening, and nothing's going on. Nothing, I hear nothing. And so I was like, okay, no big deal. Whatever it was is gone. And I go back to the front door and I make sure it's deadbolted. It is. And I make sure the door handle's locked. So I even lock the handle, the little knob, I lock that. And I text Mike, I was like, hey, just so you know, I locked the door handle too. So when you come home, you're going to have to unlock both of them. And then I go to the sliding glass door and I make sure I open it and I look out and there's nobody out. I mean, it's nighttime, it's dark. I look on the balcony, nobody's there. I close the sliding glass door, and I lock it, and I kind of tug on it to make sure it's locked, and nothing's there. And so I was like, whatever, whatever, I couldn't explain it, so I just let it be. And I go back into my room and I start playing Skyrim again, and I hear something inside Michael's bedroom, and it's banging on the wall. You could hear something climbing up the wall. It's like, when you hit the wall and you hear it going like that, it was like, it was weird. You could hear something climbing up the wall. And I thought that was, I'm sitting there listening, and I put my ear to the wall and I'm kind of listening to it to see if I could hear any voices or anything, and I don't. And so like I'm sitting there and I'm just listening. And then I see something, the light underneath my door, I see like a shadow move outside the door. So, and then I see it start to open my door and whatnot. And so I jump up real quick and I hold the door and I just hold it. And I text Michael and I say, hey, and I'm not going to say his name, but I text Michael and I say, Michael, he's here. And Michael's like, what do you mean? I was like, dude, he's here tonight. Because I was like, he's here. And Mike's like, okay. He's like, well, just lock your door. He doesn't know. He's drunk. And a lot of stuff happens that night. Like I hear banging on the walls. I hear things being thrown around. I hear running down the hallway and whatnot. And I end up locking my door and I, try to go to sleep because I have to work the next day. So I end up doing that. End up falling asleep. I don't know what time it was, but I fall asleep. I wake up. I go to work the next day. Michael comes home. And he doesn't get home until probably 3 p.m. because he'll text me. And this is the part that kind of spooked me out a little bit. He texted me. He's like, hey, are you, he's like, what time are you going to be home? And I was like, well, I work till 6. And he's like, okay. And I was like, and he didn't respond after he said, okay. And I was like, hey, why, what's up, man? And he's like, you need to come home. And I was like, what's wrong? He's like, dude, there's something here. He's like, I could feel it. He's like, there's something in this room. And I was like, are you okay? He's like, no, I'm not okay. And Michael, he's a stocky, he's a broad shouldered, big dude. A lot of my friends say he's built like a brick house because he's just he's a pretty big dude. And so when he texted me and he said that he's not okay and he needs me to come home, I knew something was wrong. So I go up to my boss. I say, hey, Kara, do you mind if I leave early? Mike said that he's home and something's going on. And she's like, yeah, no, that's fine. She let me leave. I drive 30 minutes home and I get there and Mike's sitting in his room, sitting on his bed. And he's just looking at the ground. And I come around the corner, I see him sitting there, just sit down at the floor. And I was like, bro, hey, I'm home. And he's like, he looked at me. He's like, did you come in my room last night? I was like, no. And he was like, no, for real, did you come in my room? I was like, no, man, I didn't come in your room. And he said, Danny, he's like, just be real, man. I'm not mad. He said, did you? And I was like, Michael, I didn't come in your room. I said, I stayed in my room. And he's like, look at my room. And I look, and on his wall, and like he would smoke in his room sometimes and kind of blow the smoke out the window. And he had an ashtray, or he had a cup. It was one of those old Pepsi cups, and he had cigarettes all built in it. And that's what he usually used to put his cigarettes out. And every single one of those cigarettes that he had was laid out in his carpet, just laid out all around his bed. And I was like, dude, it wasn't me, bro. I didn't do that. And he's like, well, what about this? And he points to the wall, and where he was sitting, his TV was like in front of him, but above his wall, there was handprints going up his wall in the ashes of the cigarette butts. And I'm like, Michael, it wasn't me, dude. I promise you. I said, I heard it. I heard something last night, but it wasn't me. And I helped him clean up, and we were cleaning it. And he was sitting there, and he's like, Dan, we got to move, man. He said, there's something. I was like, Mike, you know, it ain't the place. It don't matter where we live. It follows us. He's like, I know. He's like, but dude, he's like, I don't like it here. And I was like, I feel you. And these are new apartments too. They were just built. I think they were built like 2 years before we even moved in. They were brand new. They wasn't like they'd been there for 30, 40, 50 years. These were brand new. And then later, Michael started dating this lady who actually he ended up marrying. Her name's Katie. And anytime that she would stay over, she would always text Michael or she's like, hey, when are you guys coming home? Because she hated being there by herself. Absolutely hated being there by herself. And she's like, I always feel like somebody's watching me. I always feel like somebody's there. And I remember one night she had stayed the night. I was in my bedroom, and like I said, our bedrooms are close together, like really close together, like basically a wall just between us. And I was in my room sleeping, and she was with Michael and their room sleeping. And she had woke up to use the restroom, and she went to use the restroom, and she told me this, and she even showed me this, and she's like, she got scared that something was in the hallway, and she ended up, I don't know how she did it, but she ended up taking a picture with the flash on, but it was pure black. It was the weirdest thing. It was like when you take a flash picture and it lights up the room, whatever, and you see, it wasn't like that in the picture. It was a black hallway, but in front of my bedroom, there was a tall black figure that she got on camera on the picture. We don't have the picture anymore. It was back when we had our old phones. Like this is years ago. This is back. They've been married now for 12, 13 years. So this is before they were married. But she snapped a picture, and sure enough, you see this tall black figure standing in front of my door, and scared her to death. Scared her to death. I want to say later that year, we ended up moving into my parents' house that they had in Wellsville, because my parents moved to another city, not far away, but they moved, and we had moved into that house, and we lived there, the three of us, for a little bit before Katie got pregnant, and then they moved to St. Louis, and I stayed in the house by myself. But anywhere that we ever stayed, she always, didn't like staying there. And my girl now, she's the same way. Whenever she would stay the night, we would, my older place, she hated using the restroom at night. She hated staying there or waiting for me if I wasn't home. Even in my new place now, she don't really like being here by herself. She'll come over if my little brother's here, and she'll stay in my room or something. But if I'm not here, she don't like to be here. So it's just always something, man, something spooky always. But any questions or anything yet so far?
I mean,
Yeah, I mean that's a lot, dude.
Yeah, I mean that's such a well, thank you for sharing the stories, that's for sure. Just a lot, obviously a lot to unpack there. Both of those, all the stories you told are just super crazy. Now, I will go back, I guess it's because this is all like sort of connected, you think, with this one entity, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and it's all connected, you think, via this blood curse or possible blood curse that was done to you now before you were adopted. Is that what you think to be the case?
Yes,
Okay,
that's what we believe.
I just wanted to make sure. Okay, yeah. So yeah, that's so strange, especially when you're like, hey, we go from house to house, and it's not necessarily the houses that's the problem. It's obviously some sort of connection, like to you and your brother, and like obviously there's some sort of connection there that's allowing this thing, to like follow you guys and sort of torture you. Now, how often are you seeing this entity or having sort of I would say I want to say like episodes or whatever. Like how frequent can it be? And you said because there was a time where you had a 6 or 7 year gap. So currently, are you at a time period where it's like very, very active, or it's kind of like it comes and goes? It's kind of like cycles? How does that work? How has that been happening for you?
So you're right. It was after I prayed over that one young lady. It's probably about 6 or 7 years. that I experienced anything. Nothing. I mean, no bad dreams, no nightmares, nothing. No shadows, no writing in the mirrors, no lights flickering, nothing crazy. And when I started to write my book again, that's when it started to come out.
Mm.
But I will say, ever since I got my book published, it has been very active.
Interesting.
So the reason why I even messaged Bo about getting on his podcast was I was it was a Saturday night. Cody, who's my little brother, he's not really little anymore. He's 27, but I call him my little brother. He's my little brother. We were playing Call of Duty till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Actually, it was till 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was going into a Sunday, and he had to work later that day, and I didn't, so I was going to sleep in. And so we stayed up till 2 o'clock playing Call of Duty, and then I jumped in bed, and around it was this is the weirdest thing. It was 3:45 in the morning. I wake up. Now I have two dogs. I have a at that time I had a husky. I just gave her away about a month and a half ago to my best friend. But at that time I had a husky and I have a boxer, and they sleep with me every night. I have a Rottweiler now, so I still have two dogs. So every night I have at least two dogs sleeping with me. But that night it was Obi, my boxer, and it was Ruby, the husky, and they were both sleeping with me. And I wake up at 3:45, and I know it's 3:45 because I look at my phone, and because I plan on waking up actually to go to church. So I had set my alarm at 8 o'clock in the morning, and because church started at 9, and I laid down. I look at my phone and see it's 3:45. I was like, okay, I still got a couple hours before I have to wake up. I roll back over, and I go into a sleep. 4 o'clock on the dot, I wake up. I could barely breathe, and I don't know why. And so like I start waking up, and when I'm waking up, I see the figure, the demon. He's standing like he's over me. His face is face to face with mine. His nose is basically touching my nose, and he has his hand wrapped around my throat like this. He's squeezing, and he brings up his other hand to his lips, and he starts laughing, and scares me to death, man. I'm half asleep, and I know it's real though because when I start yelling, my boxer jumps up. He sees the demon there. He launches at his wrist and he bites it, but he goes through his wrist. And then he starts backing up laughing, and he's laughing into the shadows in my room, and he just kind of just disappears in the shadows, but he's still there. I can still feel him. I'm screaming because it's one of those uh, shock moments, and I don't know if you ever had night terrors, but I get them frequently now since I got my book out there. And I'll wake up and I'll be screaming and I can't stop until all of a sudden I realize, hey, you're okay. And I stop. It was like that. And Obi, my boxer, comes in. He's sitting on my, sitting next to me, make sure I'm okay. And I'm snapping out of it. I go across the hallway to where my brother Cody sleeps. I open his door, and he's sitting there just staring at me. And he's like, what was that? And I was like, it was him. It was him. And I don't like to say his name. That's why, I say that. Not
Yeah,
because I'm
don't say
scared
it.
of it.
I don't want to know it. I don't want to.
Yeah, not because I'm scared of it, but because there's power in names, man. And
Yeah.
I don't want to say his name out there, and then people try to play with it or try to call him on
Yeah,
a Ouija board.
exactly.
I got a story about that for you too. Actually, it's made me think of that. I'll tell you about that here in a second. But I went into the room and Cody was laying there, or he's sitting up. You could tell he's scared because you heard me screaming. He knows I've had night terrors, but in the old apartment, we were in 3-story apartment where he had the whole third floor to himself. So when I wake up screaming, he really didn't hear anything. But he heard it this time, and I come in the room. He's looking at me, and I tell him, and I just lose it, man. I sit on the edge of the bed and I start crying. And I'm like to myself, I was like, okay, snap out of it because Cody's never seen you cry like that. You're the big brother. You got to be, protective. You got to make him not feel scared. So I snap out of it and I look at him. I was like, I'm okay. I was like, dude, I'm okay. And I go and I lay back down after I make sure he's okay. And Obi curls up underneath me and he has his head on my chest and he sleeps like that the rest of the night. But when I'm sleeping, I could feel him there. And so, like, to answer your question, it's a lot more prevalent now. Uh, he's not scared to pop up anymore. You know what I'm saying? So it's like back in the day, I think he would bide his time and he'd pick when and where he'd show up or who he's around. But now it's like whenever my girls are over, he still makes appearances. Like one night I woke up sleeping from sleep, and I didn't know this, but she had held me because I had woke up screaming. And she said I kept saying that he's here with his white face, he's here with his white face. And I don't remember having that nightmare. I don't remember that night terror, but she is scared her to death. And she's like, hey, dude, you okay? And she held me until I fell back asleep. But it's like he just doesn't care anymore. And I think it's because, like I said, the veil is thinning, and I think that they're getting more power and they're allowed to do more stuff. And but when I was a kid, it would be, I don't know, man, once every few months when I was a kid. When I became a young adult and I was living on my own, he would be more prevalent. Things would pop up and different times and stuff like that. And I could usually tell when it's going to happen. I could feel the change in the air. I could feel, I could feel the presence. I could feel the darkness coming. And so it's like, I can usually tell, and I usually warn whoever I'm with, hey, it's going to be a crazy night or whatever. And, but, sometimes I can't. Sometimes I don't even know. He just pops up.
Yeah,
But
like a surprise attack.
yeah, oh, absolutely. And it's like I've never had sleep paralysis in my life. I hear people talk about it all the time, and I believe it is real. And I never personally experienced it until I got my book into publication. So when you put your book into publication, and you have depends what publishing company it goes through. But through mine, because it's a Christian novel, I had to go through an assessment. And that assessment took 12 weeks. And they broke down every word, every line, every chapter. And they make sure that you don't have any foul language in it. You don't have any sex. You don't have any, anything that would be dishonoring to God. And it's so strict that you can't even say the word stupid or dumb because they don't want to offend nobody. And so that's why the assessment took 12 weeks. And when I sent it into publication for the assessment, it was June 17th. And then in August, I actually had my first experience of sleep paralysis. And I woke up. I had Obi, my boxer, and my husky Ruby. They're both sleeping with me, and I'm laying there. It's about 3:30 in the morning, and I can't move at all. The only thing I can move is my eyes. And and I'm like, dude, what's going on? Because I'm thinking at first I'm dreaming, but I start like looking, and I know I'm not dreaming. I know I'm wide awake, and I just cannot move. And I'm like thinking to myself, like, what, Jesus, what's going on? And I feel something laying on my legs, and it's not my dogs. Um, and I feel something laying over my midsection, my chest area, and then I feel something laying on top of my head, and they're pushing me down and holding me down. And I kid you not, clear as day, like I'm talking to you now, the one laying on my head, I could hear him repeatedly tell me, do not release your novel. Do not release your novel. Do not release your novel. And when he's saying that to me, I'm saying, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And the more I say it, the lesser I could feel the presence on my body, and I could feel them start to come off me. And finally, it got to a point where they left the room, and I could move again. But it was that was the only time I've ever experienced sleep paralysis. And I told my mom the next morning or later that morning when I woke up, I texted her, I was like, Mom, I know I'm doing the right thing with getting my book out there because the devil doesn't want it to be out there.
That's right.
And,
That's right.
and so I was like, why would he attack like that if he didn't want it out there? So I was like, man, it's crazy.
Yeah, no, that's definitely confirmation for sure. If you were ever doubting that, what you're writing is what God wants you to do, because you're right, the devil wouldn't bother. If you were off base or something, or doing something that wouldn't lead people to God and Christ, then he wouldn't bother with it. That's for sure. So yeah,
Absolutely.
you're definitely on the right path, and I'm sure your book is going to help people out there, because it is a subject that a lot of people don't talk about. Like you said in your email, for a long time you were, I don't want to say afraid to talk about it, but just reluctant to talk about it because, when you start talking about these kind of things, some people don't either never heard it before, and when you hear things you never heard before, sometimes it just can be confusing, and you're like, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what this guy's talking about, but like there is spiritual warfare out there, and there
Absolutely.
is a devil that is out there, and he wants to do harm to God's people and people that are trying to do the Lord's will and do, and that sort of thing. So I think it's really important what you're doing. So I definitely applaud you. This has been an awesome conversation. I know Jason, do you have any more specific questions? Because I definitely want to hear about the Ouija board story before we leave, without a doubt. But I'm sure Jason has some questions too.
I do,
Absolutely.
but look at the comments real quick, Phil.
Oh, sure.
'Cause I can't do anything with those.
Let's see. We did have. Do you know a Glenn?
Glenn would be my dad.
Yep.
It says go to the next one.
A couple questions here.
Yeah.
Here we go. This
Is
one.
it your mom?
Tell about
Yeah.
getting pulled off the bed. This is your mom.
Yeah. So the day that the Bose podcast dropped was May 1st. So he dropped out at 11 p.m. that night. So it was actually April 31st or whatever, or 30th or whatever the last day of April was. And he dropped it, and a lot of people listened to it. I told people, about it. Really, was really excited about it, and a lot of people listened to it. And that night, I got yanked off my bed, bro. I'm sleeping, and it's me, and I have my Rottweiler now. She's still a baby. She's just a puppy. She's like 16, 17 weeks old, so she can't jump on my bed yet. So she usually sleeps on the floor. Obi, my boxer, will sleep with me, and he was sleeping with me that night. And I'm laying in bed, and I want to say 3:30 in the morning, around that time. All of a sudden, I get yanked off the bed, and I land. And here's the thing: I know I didn't just roll over and fall off out of the bed, because where my bed is against the wall, and I got pulled to where I was literally over against the wall on the other side of the room. And it was so loud that I didn't know this either until I got home later that night. Because when I got home, Cody's like, "Hey," he's like, "What happened last night or early this morning?" He's like, "I heard a loud bang at like 3, 4 in the morning." And he said it shook the whole house. And I was like, "Oh, so you heard that?" And he's like, "Dude, yeah, dude, it shook my room. It woke me up." I was like, "Cody, I got yanked out of the bed." And he's like, "What?" And then I show him my foot, and it's actually still bruised to this day. It's still bruised. I showed him my foot, and my whole foot was bruised. Like it looks to where, and it makes sense to me, because the way I usually sleep is I usually face the wall, and my left leg would be the one closest to the edge. And it looked like something had grabbed around my foot and my feet and my toes and yanked me that way, because all my toes were bruised. And I took a picture of it, sent it to my mom, I sent it to my sister, one of my sisters, and yeah, it did. It yanked me across the room and woke me up, and I wake up and I'm like, "Dude, what?" And it hurt too. Like my whole body just hurt. And Obi had jumped off of the bed, and he came down to me and make sure I was okay. But and I messaged Bo the next day. I was like, "Hey, Bo, just so you know, this is what happened." And he's like, "Dude, that's crazy." He's like, "I'm praying for you." I was like, "Thanks, I appreciate it." But yeah, so me doing that first podcast definitely angered it. I know that me doing this one, obviously, there's going to be some kind of attacks later, uh, but it is what it is, man. I'm not afraid of it, and God has a will and a power, and at the end of the day, I pray over it, and somebody asked me one day, he's like, "Why don't you ever like cast it away or pray over deliverance for yourself?" And I was like, "Well, that's the thing is, people don't realize this. I do pray about it. I do pray that God takes it away. I do pray that that it doesn't affect my life like it does. But I do believe that God allows it to, because He wants me to be able to speak about it and be able to help people who experience stuff. And I do believe that one day God's going to use me to really look evil into the face, and because of my experiences and the stuff that I've done and dealt with, it's not going to scare me like it would other people. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but that's why it's not something I enjoy. It's not something like, "Hey, let's have something crazy happen tonight." It's not like that. But it's not my control. It's God's, and whatever He throws at my way is I deal with it, and just pray about it.
Yeah, and he never gives you more than you can handle.
No, absolutely.
So even though in the moment sometimes you're like, "Oh my God, this seems like crazy," He always is faithful. He always will get you through, and
Absolutely.
that's the most important thing. And so, if you're out there struggling in any aspect of your life, the Lord's there for you.
Absolutely.
Just got to find people to pray for you, and
Yeah.
obviously reach out to God yourself and pray to God yourself. But there's power in numbers, and that's for sure. When you have multiple
Absolutely.
people praying for the same kind of cause, I mean that there's definitely a lot of power in that for sure.
Mhm.
Jason, do you have any specific questions?
Yeah, I was going to ask. So the other, your other siblings, besides the ones that are blood related to you, have they experienced the same thing? Have they seen the entity? Or I know you said your younger brother heard you screaming, but have they ever witnessed
Oh,
it like manifest or anything like that?
absolutely. 110%. My sister Nicole, we used to live together. And I actually go really in detail about some of the stuff she experienced on the Bump podcast. If you have listened to that one, you can listen to that one. We talk about it. And same thing with the girl that's demon possessed. I tell that whole story. But with Nicole, it really ruined our relationship for a long time because of the stuff that she saw and experienced. And she actually called me after the Bump podcast one drops, and we talked on the phone for 2 hours. And she had, I said to her, I said, Nicole, I know that half of the stuff that I talk about is not even half the stuff you've seen or experienced. And I said, I know you just don't like to talk about it. And she's like, you're absolutely right. She's like, there's stuff I will never talk about. So for her, for sure. Now, Cody, my little brother, he was the only one that never experienced anything until we started living together, just the two of us. Now, Cody's 7 years younger than me. So growing up, he always wanted to hang out with me and Michael, but, as older brothers, we really didn't associate with them too much. Every now and then, we loved to come stay the night with us at our place. And he would experience little things. Like one night, he spent the night with us in that Vandalia apartment that me and Michael used to live in. And at that time, he never really got to stay up really late because I was probably 20. So he was like 13, 14, maybe. I don't, not that old. And I had a PlayStation 4 at the time, and I was playing Skyrim, and I was like, hey, Cody, I was like, you could create your own character. So you can stay up all night and play if you want to. Michael's off the next day. I was like, I have to work, but you can stay in my room and play it. Well, he ends up staying up really late playing video games. And he ends up falling asleep. I wake up 4 in the morning. He's sound asleep, and the closet doors are shaking, like where the TV was in front of, and they're just shaking and rattling. And I know that obviously because Cody's there is trying to scare him. He's sound asleep. He doesn't experience that. So it happened when he was there. He didn't know that. So I told him, I was like, you dude, there's been times when, you've been with me and you didn't know because you either asleep or you weren't aware of it. But there's been stuff. But about let's see, he has his pit bull now. She's 5. So about 5 years ago, because Cody and I have been living together now for about 7, 8 years. When we first moved together, he had just gotten through a really bad breakup, and he was really thinking about getting a dog. And we were having a conversation. I was like, hey man, a dog's a lot of responsibility, blah blah blah. And so I was up in his room, and this is when we lived in the 3-story apartment. We were up in his room talking, and he's like, hey, can you we're talking about these dogs, and if we get one. Sorry if you hear a dog barking, that's my boxer.
No, it
But
just works out perfectly because you're talking about a dog in the story too.
yeah, so we're talking about the possibility about him getting a dog, and we talked for about an hour, and I was like, hey man, kind of give the dad speech, the responsibility, blah blah blah. And when I'm getting to the door to get ready to leave to go downstairs, he turns around real quick on his bed because he was playing video games. He turns around, he looks at me, he's like, hey, he's like, I got a question for you. And I was like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And I could tell he was kind of serious because the way that the mood just kind of changed in the room. And he's like, he said, Dan, I know you check on me at night. He's like, because I know you've experienced a lot of stuff. He's like, I know you check on me. He's like, I got a question. He said, the other night, did you come in my room? I was like, what do you mean, bro? He's like, did you come in my room the other night? I was like, no. He's like, you didn't come check on me? I was like, Cody, I'll be real with you, man. I haven't checked on you in probably 2 months. I was like, nothing's happened. Nothing's been crazy. I haven't checked on you at all. And he's like, yeah, I saw him. And he said his name. He knows his name. All my siblings know his name. My parents know his name. Everybody knows about it. So I closed the door real quick. I was like, "What do you mean you saw him?" He's like, "The other night I was sleeping." He said, and Cody back then he was sleeping pitch black like me. No TV on, no lights, no night light, nothing. It was just pitch black. And he said, the other night I was sleeping and I woke up and he said there was somebody sitting on the end of my bed. And he said, I know I'm not tripping because the TV was on. He's like, and I know I turned my TV off. He said, but my TV was on and there's somebody sitting on the end of my bed. And he said, damn, I kind of reached up to grab it. And he said it disappeared. And I was like, how long was he sitting there? He said, I don't know. He said, but they were sitting there the whole time and I seen him sitting there. And he's like, he's like, I was so scared. He's like, I didn't know what to do. I was like, why didn't you call for me? He's like, dude, I didn't know what to do. He's like, I was terrified. And he said he was looking at me. He was sitting there just staring at me. And I was like, what did he look like? And Cody described him to the T, but the outfit wasn't the same. So it made me think that maybe when he appears to certain people, he wears different things. It doesn't have to be the same thing. But I told Cody, I said, Cody, you saw him. I know you saw him. And Cody, to this day, not making fun of him, just being real. He sleeps with the TV on. If he's home alone, every light in this place will be lit up. He refuses to sleep with impure body. He doesn't like darkness no more. And this is 5-6 years ago, and he's still this way. And so, and I know there's probably been some other things because he doesn't like being here by himself. He doesn't like being by himself. If he's home alone, 9 times out of 10, he'll be in the living room with all the lights on playing video games. And then when I come home and he sees that I'm home, he'll go into his room then. But I mean, unless he's sleeping, he's never in his room by himself. And it just really changed the way that he looks at things. And it did. I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know what other stuff happened, but I know he's seen him and I know he knows about him. And then one night he was coming home from work. I was here. And we have a backyard now with a fence for the dogs to run and play. It's perfect. And I have a balcony and Cody came home one night and it was crazy because my girl had been here that night and we were spending some time together watching a movie. And before she was leaving, I opened my bedroom door to walk out and I hear something run across the like the tile, like whatever it was standing in front of the door. And as soon as I open the door, it takes off running. And I stop and I freeze and I kind of look around and she hears it too. And she's like, did you hear that? Because I was going to play off like nothing happened. I didn't want to scare her. And she's like, did you hear that? And I was like, you heard it too? And she's like, yeah. She said, something's running on the tile. All the dogs are outside. And she's like, yeah, I heard that. And she ends up leaving. Cody comes home that night. The dogs are outside still. We have a motion sensor light, that outside the porch, whatever. So when the dogs run around, we can see them. And Cody comes home and he comes to the house and he's like, hey, he's like, were you just outside? I was like, no. I was in my room watching some TV show or whatever. He's like, you're not out? You didn't go outside? I was like, no. I haven't been outside in a minute. He's like, damn, when I was coming, because when you come back on this back road off of Bighorn, this is the name of the street there. You come off Bighorn. If you look to the left, you could see our backyard and our balcony and our porch and stuff. And he said, Dan, when I was coming home, he said, I saw this tall figure standing there on the balcony. He said, it was all black. He said, at first I thought it was you, but it was taller than what you would have been. And I was like, that's funny because tonight, and I told him how I heard running on footsteps and stuff. And so he's definitely been seeing a lot more stuff. And all my siblings, man, me and Michael, we've seen a lot of stuff together. My baby sister, Janie, we've seen some stuff together. Katie, of course, all of them. The only ones that my parents haven't. Now, if they have, they never told us. But yeah, all my siblings, even some of my friends when they stayed the night, my friends experienced things. One of my best friends growing up, KB, he stayed the night, and I talk about it on the other podcast about why we didn't talk for 3 months after that because of the stuff he saw.
Wow.
And but yeah, all of them, every single one of them.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. Yeah, man. Thank you for sharing all these stories because, like I said,
Absolutely.
I think it's absolutely important to get these stories out there, especially that people can be healed and delivered from this kind of stuff and don't have to live
Absolutely.
and this, you know, in that kind of fear. Because if you're not a Christian person and you're living with this kind of stuff or having these kind of things happen to you, there really isn't anywhere really you can turn, you know, that's gonna really fix this problem. So no, this is I think this is super important.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up,
Hey,
I,
hang on
I definitely want to hear that Ouija board story for sure.
one
Okay.
second before we get to the Ouija board. Hold on a second. So, dude, I don't know if Phil knows where I'm going. So I've experienced a few things, right,
Mhm.
in my life. And some of the things you were just saying really hit home for me. One night, this was maybe 5, 6 years ago. My wife and I were asleep, and I woke up and I saw some sort of entity sitting on our bed. And the only way I could describe it is, I mean, it wasn't there long. It was like I woke up, I saw it. I think I screamed and like backed up. You know, I mean, I was awake. It wasn't a
Mhm.
dream. The only way I can describe it is, it looked like the Green Goblin from Spider Man. If you
Mhm.
know what, that's
Oh,
what it.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, but not green. But that's the only way I could describe its face. Um, and when you were telling that story about your brother, I was just like, "Oh, I've been there. I know exactly what that feels like." Um, but I've woken up before and seen an old lady standing next to my bed.
Mhm.
I've had numerous encounters like that. I've talked about this on the podcast before, so people are like, "We know Jason."
Mm.
But yeah, man, yeah. I had a friend that came over to my parents' house. I had like a sleepover with a bunch of friends, and he saw some stuff, and he didn't talk to me for a while, and he he would never come back to my house again.
Yep.
So I've been there. I've been there. Yeah.
Yep. And it's crazy, man. It's because it's the thing at the end of the day when you talk about this to other people, I say normal people, whatever. Uh, a lot of times either one or two way goes one or two ways. One, they believe you, or two, they think you're nuts, you know. And so like it's as when I was growing up, it really got to a point where I was very careful of who I spoke to about anything like this. Because I mean, I know I'm not crazy. I know I've some of the stuff that happened to me has been nuts, it's been crazy. But I know I'm not crazy. I know it's real. It's very, very, prominent. I know a lot of people deal with this stuff and so like I'm at that point now to where if I could help somebody, if I could pray over somebody, if somebody's experienced something, they want me to come, check it out. I'm not afraid to do it. I've seen a lot of stuff, and I know that God's given me, the gifts and the power to be there for people with it. Um, and then I'll tell you just a short story, one last small one before I tell you the Ouija board. But Cody closes on Tuesday nights. So on Tuesday nights, he's not home. It's just me and the four dogs. And we have a good understanding and agreement to where if he's home, he takes care of the dogs. If I'm home, I'm going to take care of the dogs, and vice versa. And he's gone this night. I'm home alone. And I am sleeping. I have my boxer and his pit bull in my bed. They're the big ones, and the two baby ones sleep on the floor until they get big enough and they can jump on. But 3:30 in the morning, I wake up on this Tuesday night, and I just feel weird. I feel like somebody's watching me. And on my bedroom door, I hear a knock, three knocks on my door. And I know this is the thing. I know I'm not tripping because Obi, my boxer, jumps up. He hears it. He sits up on the bed and he stares at the door. And they're very high alert, all four of them, even the puppies. If they hear anything that they don't like, they go nuts. And Obi heard it. He sits up, he looks, and I know Cody's not home because when he comes home early Wednesday morning, he takes all four dogs. So obviously he's not home if I have all the dogs. And and he usually does get home about 4:30. But it's 3:30. I hear this knock, and I sit up in my bed like this, and I look at the door like that, just staring at the door, watching, waiting. And I hear the three knocks again. And Obi did not like that. He jumped up, started barking, going nuts, went to the foot of the door, started barking and barking and barking. And I hear through the barking, I hear somebody run across the tile, just run away from the door. And so late, I wake up. at 7, 8 o'clock that morning. Cody's already home. He's sound asleep. I text him. I said, "Hey, what time did you get home last night or this morning?" He texted me later that day. He's, "I didn't get home till 5:30." So I was like, I told him, I was like, "Yeah, dude, just so you know, this is what happened last night." Like little things like that. But the reason why, to go into the Ouija board for you, man, I've told a lot of Ouija board stories. This is one that is kind of free. It's kind of freaky, but it's real. It's I don't like to tell people about the name of this demonic because people like to play with it,
Yeah.
or they don't think it's real. And this is a prime example of it. Back when I was a first assistant for Taco Bell, I used to close on certain nights. And one night I was closing, I was with two young ladies that I worked with at the time. Both of them were into witchcraft or Wiccan or whatever you want to, it's real. It is. I'm not making fun. That stuff's real. But
Yeah.
they were practicing that stuff, and they knew I was a Christian, so they would talk to me about it. And they knew my uncle. My uncle Gary was still alive at this time. They knew my uncle was big into that stuff, and everything they would tell me, I was like, "Girls, you got to be careful, man. You guys are playing with fire." I was like, "You got to be careful." I said, "I wouldn't do that. Blah blah. I wouldn't do that." And they would always ask me advice or stories. And one night, and they asked me one time, they're like, "Hey, you want to come play with the Ouija board?" And I was like, "Nope, I've done that. I ain't doing that again." I was like, "I'm not doing it." I was like, especially when I'm not saying they didn't know what they were doing, but some of the stuff that they talked about to me, I was just like, that doesn't seem, I don't, no, thank you. I'm not opening that door. Well, unbeknownst to me, they go, and I told them about my situation, about my blood curse and the demonic entity it's tied to me, and I told them its name and stuff like that. Well, they went one night and they played with the Ouija board. And I know this is real because they came and they told me the next day, and they recorded it, they wrote it down, whatever they do, and it freaked them out, and they have not played with one since, to my knowledge. I know one of them had mentioned to my brother the other day that she wants to start it back up again, but she's kind of scared because of all the stuff that happened. But when they were playing with it, they were trying to call upon, obviously, his name, and he appeared. So when they're playing with his board and they're asking questions, nothing really happened at first. And they start asking different names and, like, "Hey, trying to, is anybody there?" The typical stuff, and nothing would happen. And then finally, she said his name, and it moves to, or is anybody there? And she said his name, and he moves to yes. And sorry, there's a bug flying. I see it. Distracted me. But she's like, said to it, she's like, "Are you good?" And he's like, "No." And she's like, "Well, what do you want?" And it doesn't move. It doesn't say anything. And she's like, what are you looking for? What do you want?" And when I tell you this, I'm not making this up. This is scared her to death. And she asked it again, "What do you want?" It goes to my name. It spells DANIEL. And then she's like, she looks at her friend. They're like, "What?" But here's the thing. It doesn't stop there. It spells my last name to the T. Does not misspell it. It spells the SWARTHOUT. Here's the kicker. I'm nowhere near this place. She lives 45 minutes from where I live. So it's not like I'm in this vicinity. I'm not in the area. I'm nowhere near it. It spells my name to the T. She said that it started to say some dark stuff and it started to do some stuff. And then the lights in her room started to flicker and it started to manifest. And they said that they saw him standing outside the bedroom window looking at him. And she said it scared her to death. And they ended up closing it or whatever they could. And well, she tells me about the next day. When she sees me, first thing I do is call my uncle. He's not, he didn't answer. So I messaged him on Facebook. I was like, "Hey, Uncle, when you have a chance, give me a call." And he ends up calling me. He's like, "Hey, man, what's up?" And I was telling him, I was like, "Hey, this is what happened." And he said, "Were you there?" And I was like, "No, I promise you I was not there. I was home alone. I didn't even know they were doing this." And he's like, Daniel, do you have any kind of relations with these women? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, are you intimate? And I was like, oh, no, we're just friends. And he said, I'm telling you this right now. He said, never in your life would step in that house. He said, never be around them alone like that. He said, don't be intimate with them. Don't go around them. He said, he said, if that's him, he said, if it manifests itself from the Ouija board and if it spelt your name, your full name, he said, that is a very powerful being. He said, they do not do that. He said, for it to do that, to say that it wants you by name, he said, don't ever go there. And so like with that experience, like I know Ouija boards are real, man. Me and my older brother played with one a long time ago, and I talk about that on the Bump podcast as well. But that's why I told her I'm not doing it. And when she played with it, and she said that it called me by my name, and she said that when she finally said his name and he appeared, I was like, that's why I don't talk about him like that. I don't say his name. I told Bo, because he had messaged me, because he does a lot of like research and stuff like that. He's like, hey, I want to see if I can find anything. I was like, absolutely. He said, feel free, see if you could find something. I was like, yeah, I don't think you will. Nobody ever has. I was like, I've never have. I know what he goes by. Now his demonology name, or whatever you want to call it, demon name, I don't know it. I just know what he goes by. And I was like, so that's why I've never been able to find anything. But crazy stuff, man.
Yeah,
That is.
definitely.
It's
Definitely.
I got cold chills a few times when you're telling that story. Not gonna lie, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not trying to take all you guys' time. I got so many stories, man. So anytime you guys want me on to where I could talk more, or if you want to know more in depth about certain stories, like the girl that was demon possessed, or experiences that I've done with my siblings, or just anything, man, I'm open. I'm cool.
Yeah.
I have no problem doing that.
Yeah,
But
I was going to ask you because I mean, I definitely, I think we can go a couple more hours.
Yeah.
There's,
oh
I think
oh
there's a
yeah.
lot more to talk about and
Yeah, for sure.
unpack. You know,
Yeah, we'll definitely have to do a part 2 because I mean this was awesome already. So I'm definitely excited to hear what more you have to say in part 2 for sure. But your book is called The Ringler, A
Yep.
Letter from Home. Is there any other? There it is, right there. You can buy it. Where can they buy it to give you the most benefit? Where was it? Your publishers? What was your publisher's name again?
Westbow Press. Yeah,
Westbrook.
you go to Westbow Press. They are a subdivision of Thomas Nelson and Sondervan. So they're big name people went through them starting out. Like Ted Decker actually went through them before he became big. My mentor, who's a New York Times bestselling author, his name's William Searles. He's the one who got me in contact with them. They just phenomenal from the start to the finish. Really enjoyed them. But you could get it from Westbow Press. You get it from Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all over. Yeah, like for real, you look at my name on Google and it's all over there.
Awesome. And I encourage everyone out there to buy this book. You guys are going to love this book.
Yeah.
We appreciate you having it on. Is there anything else you want to plug before you leave besides your book?
I got one more question. Probably the most important question of the night.
Uh-oh.
Do you still play Call of Duty?
Oh yes, sir, man. Me and my brother, we play all the time. Actually, I have my own. So on my book, the subtitle is book 1 of the Mob series.
Yeah.
Everybody says Mob or it's Mob. It's something that me and my buddies started when we were kids. And now that I'm an adult, I actually made it into an acronym. It stands for May Our Breath Ever Last, because I believe as Christians, even if we die, what we preach and what we talk about is everlasting, which is Christ. And so that's what it stands for, is Mob, May Our Breath Ever Last. And actually, I have my own clan. Me and my buddies, we all play together. Cool. We have a clan. And so if you see Mob, it's my buddies. And that's what we play almost every night, actually. And so my little brother's actually pretty good. He's and him and I play, when we play together, we do really well together. We have a lot of fun with it.
Cool. So I'm a big Call of Duty guy, dude. So I'm going to hit you up. I'll send you my gamer tag and stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. That'll be fun, man. I play all the time.
PC, so
No, that's cool. We play. Some of my buddies play PC. Some of my buddies play Xbox. I play PS5. But either way, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, man.
Awesome.
I told you the most important question of the night.
That's right. So is there anything else you want to plug before we head out?
Just thank you for the opportunity, man. Like I said, I just really appreciate it. I think it's fun. I love talking about it. I love, meeting new people. I love talking about things that God's done in my life, and really just trying to get my book out there too. And because I do believe God has his hand on it and he's working some stuff with it. But you can find me on Instagram, Dano Swarthout. Dano's my nickname. I do have a Facebook page. I don't use Twitter. I don't use Twitter at all. But Instagram and Facebook are my biggest things. I do have a TikTok, which is the same as Dano Swarthout. So anything is Dano Swarthout, man. But that's, yeah. Other than that, if you have questions, people have questions, feel free to message me, ask me. I'm an open book with it. And anytime that you guys want me to get on, or if you have questions that you think of, you should feel free to shoot me a text or email. Either way is fine with me. And I'm good, man. I'm happy to do whatever.
Awesome. Yeah, we thank you again for coming on. We'll put all your links to all your book and all your other socials and everything in the links to this podcast so people can find you and all your work. Jason, why don't you tell everyone about Fat Tack and a wonderful sponsor, and we'll wrap this up.
Hey guys, I know I said at the beginning, but I'm going to reiterate, guys, fattack.com. Go check it out. They're a sponsor. If you are a big dude and you need tactical gear, go. They have you covered. They have plate carriers. They have belts. They have like fanny packs coming up that have like Velcro holsters. They have the Fat Tack premium holster, the Fat Tack holster, and a bunch of cool shirts. Fattack.com. Go check them out. Tell them AFK Discussion sent you.
Awesome. And we will be back next week with another episode of AFK Discussions. Until then, see you guys.
Thanks, guys.